Hello and welcome to the Mostly Magnificent podcast. This is episode 16 or so. Not totally sure on the number. Anyway, so I'm currently on maternity leave. I finished my last week of work last week, so I am at home just kind of resting, preparing, etc. My daughter is still in daycare, so this is a good opportunity to kind of get some things done around the house for last minute prep, do some crafting, recharge a little bit because physically I'm not in great condition. Baby is good. I'm overall healthy, but I'm pretty physically limited in terms of my mobility and stuff like that. So anyway, but good chance to sit down and record a show. So we will jump right into the thick of things. So we'll kick things off with some knitting past. And I don't have a lot to kind of show. I've finished two sweaters. They were both watermelon sweaters by Alana Jackos. And I knit them out of the Spud and Chloe sweater in a kind of lime green and red for the watermelon. I knit those for friends of mine. One had a baby back in late February, and one is due a week after I am. And so the Meet the Baby party was about a month ago, and the baby shower was a couple of weeks ago. So those were my deadline, need to get these done kind of projects. And I cut it close. I did a lot of procrastinating on those because the knitting isn't very interesting. I mean, it's basically they're plain stockinette sweaters. I mean, you switch colors at the yoke, but I mean, otherwise there's not a lot that is really engaging. And I had all the projects that I was working on getting done for my own baby as well. I know, super selfish, right? So the one for the baby shower, I think I was doing the embroidery on for the watermelon seeds 20 minutes before I needed to leave. I was almost going to do them on the bus. But they're done. They were well appreciated. I want to knit one more of those sweaters for my own baby. And then that'll be it for watermelon sweaters. I liked the pattern. It was clearly written. I don't like the sizing. I think the sizing is huge. I mean, my daughter is small, so my perception of baby sizes is a little bit different than someone who has a larger child or a more average sized child. But nevertheless, the smallest size came out quite big. And I even, for the second one I knit, because I was knitting it for a smaller baby, or a baby that was going to be younger in the summer, because they're knit out of cotton yarn. They're kind of meant to be worn in the summer versus during the winter and fall. And I actually ended up doing some math to adjust the pattern down. And even that came out kind of large. I also went up a needle size for that one because I found that using the size 6 needle that I used for the first one, it came out kind of dense. So I went up to a 7 and I dropped sizes quite a bit. And I think I'll do that even more for the one I knit for my own child because she's likely to be quite a bit smaller than average, like her sister and like her parents. It was a fun knit. I'm happy with the result. But I do think the sizing is maybe a little bit off, but I could be totally wrong about that too, honestly. They're fun. So I have a few almost finished objects to talk about. They're kind of they're in a pile of stuff that needs a little bit done on it before it's done. And I really need to start cracking on that pile because at 37 weeks pregnant, it could be go time anytime. Probably not for another couple of weeks, but it could happen. And if I want to get this stuff done, I should really get it done. So, to start off, so this is the almost finished pea pod baby sweater. This is a Kate Gilbert pattern. It used to be available on the Knitting Daily website. It is not available anymore. So unfortunately you can't get this pattern if you want it. And I apologize for that. So I'm I'm so-so on this sweater, actually. I found the instructions not super easy to follow, just because they were a wall of text with a lot of, like, at the same times that were difficult to keep track of because of the wall of text. And I'm really just spoiled by, written for download patterns. I feel like if you're going to make a pattern only available online, it should maybe be designed to be an online pattern instead of just looking like a page from a magazine. But anyway, that's my own little pet peeve. Something kind of, I don't even know what I did there. I'm pretty sure I followed the pattern, but I feel like there's this bit of stockinette right here above the lace that I'm not totally keen on. Feels like it should end a little bit higher up. But okay, it's okay. So as you can see, I have currently a Peapod baby vest, and I have a couple of sleeves. So I just blocked these the other day. We finally have some sunny weather, and so I can block and dry stuff outside, which is amazing, because here in wet and soggy Vancouver, it takes a long time for stuff to dry indoors a lot of the time. Like, it can be days. I've had sweaters take a week to dry during, like, the fall or spring. I don't even try blocking sweater stuff in the winter because it'll take forever. And you start to get worried about, like, mildew and stuff. Like, if, I don't know, I worry about it anyway. So, that's been nice. So those are now blocked, and I am ready to sew the sleeves in and then sew on the buttons, which I actually need to procure. So the next thing in the almost finished pile is this. This is a puerperium cardigan, and I knit it as a going home sweater for the little baby. And I knit it out of my hand spun. The spinning, which I will talk about later on, was started during my back. So this one still needs to be blocked, and it needs its ends woven in, and then it needs buttons. And since this is a going home sweater, I should probably do that, because if I want her to wear it coming home from the hospital, it's actually going to need to be done before she's born, and before I go into labor. I don't think I'm going to be sewing on buttons and weaving in ends during labor. Just a thought. But it was a fun knit. It went really fast. It didn't take a whole lot of yarn. I think I had about 140-ish yards that I had finished spinning and plying at that point. And I had a tiny, tiny, tiny amount left, like, a ball yay big when it was done. But I did have enough yarn. I made the shorter sleeves because we are talking about summer versus when I had a November baby last time. I think it's going to be big, but that's probably okay since she'll wear it a little bit longer. My first daughter did not wear her going home sweater for very long. It fit her in the hospital. It was even a little bit big, but she outgrew it super, super fast. So that's it for knitting past stuff. Now, sorry. So, knitting present. The one kind of active work in progress that I have right now is a mini Manu. That is a Kate Davies pattern. I am on the yoke right now, and I will get to start the pleats pretty soon. This sweater, a sweater made out of this yarn, this is the Orkney, it's an Orkney DK, it's an Angora blend, and one of the local yarn stores has had this sweater in this yarn on display for quite some time now, and I have admired it and been tempted by it every time I've been in there, and just this last time it became too tempting, and so I bought the yarn and sweater. It's super impractical for a baby sweater because it is absolutely not not machine washable by any stretch. So it is the kind of thing that I would probably only knit for my own children, where I can take full responsibility for what happens to it. But it's been fun, it's actually gone by a lot faster than I thought it would. When I started this, I didn't think there was any chance at all that I was going to get it done prior to the baby being born, but I think depending on when she decides to make her appearance, I might actually make it. So that's good. But it's so cute and purple. And I'm picturing her wearing this with like a matching like purple beret style hat or something. That's kind of the vision that I have in my head. And that's pretty much all the knitting that I've been working on. I've been busy working on a lot of other projects and not so much with the knitting. Hello and welcome to the Mostly Magnificent podcast. It is the beginning of June and this marks the beginning of my maternity leave. I was originally going to work 1 week longer, so this would have been my last week, but physically it was just getting too difficult with the commuting and a lot of walking and stuff like that. And so I decided to take advantage of the fact that I did have some vacation time to use to take off a little bit early. I also didn't want to get into a situation where I would potentially need to take off unexpectedly if things got particularly difficult physically in terms of getting around and such. I like to be in control, so my daughter is still in daycare though, so I have some time to get projects done around the house. Mostly stuff, like making sure that we have bottles and diapers and things like that we're, as ready as we need to be. But it's also time to relax a little bit, do some self-care, and just kind of get ready. So, it's also a good opportunity to actually sit down and record a podcast while I still have a chance. And I have been doing a lot of crafting, so I have quite a bit to talk about, I think. And I'm excited to show you. So let's get started. Knitting past. So I have finished a couple of knitting projects recently, but I can't show them to you because they've already been given away. So when we were expecting our first child, no one around us was having babies. This time around, everyone is having babies. So two couples that we're really good friends with either just recently had a baby or are having one soon. So we had two baby-related parties to attend in May. The first was a Meet the Baby party for friends that had their daughter back in late February. And the other was a baby shower for a friend of mine who is due a week after I am. And I decided I wanted to knit watermelon sweaters for all three of the babies in that circle of friends. So the one that was born in February, the one due in July, and then ours. But I needed to do the first two watermelon sweaters earlier. I mean, I can knit the one for ours kind of whenever. So I did the watermelon sweater by Alana Dacos, and I used the Spud and Chloe sweater in a green and a red. And it's a worsted weight yarn, and it's been used for this pattern before on Ravelry, but I found it quite dense, and I got gauge or pretty close to it, but I still found the fabric to be quite dense. So I think I would probably go down to like a DK weight yarn in the future if I were knitting these. I'll stick to the Spud and Chloe sweater for the one that I make for my own baby. But if I ever make it again, I think I'll use a thinner yarn. But the sizing also comes out quite large, in my opinion. I felt like the sweaters were both quite big. And I'm not sure how old these babies are going to be when they fit these sweaters. I mean, and it depends. Like baby sizing is really difficult because babies don't come in, the same size. Like the average or normal weight for a newborn is like anywhere from 6 to 9 pounds. And there's a big difference there. Like 3 pounds really counts when you're talking about like a 6-pound baby versus a 9-pound baby. And I know from my daughter, who's a little bit of a small tiny child, that there's a lot of variation in size. She's quite petite, and she's got friends at daycare that are younger than her that they tower over her. And that's just probably going to be her lot in life. Anyway, so for the first one, I knitted it basically exactly as the pattern was written, and that went fine. I wasn't super happy with the thickness of the fabric, and so when I went to knit the second one, I went up a needle size, but I did some math and adjusted the pattern down from the smallest size available in the pattern because I didn't want it to come out too big. So both sweaters ended up coming out about the same size, which I still think is a little bit large for like a 3-month size. So when I knit the one for my baby, depending on when I get to it anyway, but if I knit it soon, I'm probably going to do some more math and go down to an even smaller size, because I'm quite confident that at least in the case of my own child, we're talking about a bit of a smaller baby. But it was a fun knit. It wasn't the most interesting knit ever. It was really good for like transit and coffee break knitting because it's mostly just a stockinette sweater from the bottom up. That's really all there is to it. But it knits up pretty fast because it's worsted weight. So you get finished the body and the sleeves and all that pretty fast. I think it took about a week's worth of knitting time in each case, maybe a little bit less. The second one I finished super, super last minute. I think I ended up doing the embroidery of the seeds 20 minutes before I needed to get on a bus to go to the baby shower. And I was very close to ending up needing to do the embroidery on the bus on my way. That's procrastination for you. But it's done. They're done, and they're cute, and they were well received, and hopefully I will get a chance to knock one out for my own baby before the summer is over, because I think it would be really cute especially to see like the 3 girls with their matching watermelon sweaters. So that's it for like really knitting past, but I have a couple of things to show you that are kind of mostly knitting past, where they're pretty close to done. So the first one, this is a Purpurium cardigan, and this is going to be the going home sweater for our baby. It's knit out of hand spun, and I'll talk about that more in a later segment. This knit up ultra fast, like in a few days kind of fast. And I'm really happy with it. It took about 140-ish yards of hand spun. This makes it a really good pattern for hand spun because you don't need to have a lot of it. You're not talking about a huge investment in time in terms of getting enough yarn. So all I need to do on this one now is it needs a blocking, which I will probably do today, and it needs its ends woven in, and then it needs some buttons. But I should really do that within the next day or two, because that is the sweater that needs to get packed in the hospital bag so that she can wear it home from the hospital. But it's an easy pattern, it's really simple. I use the free one, just the Purpurium that comes in one size, and it's meant to be worn by a small baby, and that's fine. There's also a paid Ravelry download pattern called Beyond Purpurium that comes in different sizes, and I believe also different yarn weights. So if you're wanting to knit it out of like a figurine versus a DK, which is what this is, or DK-ish anyway, you can do that. The next thing is a Peapod baby sweater. I have to admit, we'll have to see like once it's actually completely sewn together and stuff. I'm a little bit disappointed in this one. This is one of the patterns that I had queued when I was pregnant with my first and never got around to knitting. And I was excited to knit it again, to have another chance to knit it. Because it only goes up to an 18-month size, so I just kind of ran out of time to knit it while it would fit. And the pattern is no longer available, which is unfortunate. It was originally available on Interweave Knitting Daily. It's a Kate Gilbert pattern, but it's not available there anymore. And it doesn't appear like it's ever going to become available again. It's been out of print, as it were, for quite some time now, which is too bad, because it is cute, and I really like the hat that goes with it, and if I have a chance, I'm going to knit the hat. So one of the things I'm not super happy about is, like, up in here, I don't know if you can see, it just feels like the leaf ends a little too soon, and that's quite possibly a mistake on my part, but I can't really figure out where I went wrong there. And it's been blocked, so I don't think that's something that's going to be resolved. I mean, it's not a huge deal or anything, it's just something that's kind of niggling at me a little bit. The pattern I found a little difficult to follow. I think that's, again, me, not the pattern really. While it was always a download-only pattern, it was laid out and designed like a magazine pattern. So it's got a big block of text, and that's not my preferred way to get patterns these days, especially when you've got a lot of, like, at the same times. And you have to really read through to catch, like, all the at the same times. And I'm spoiled because I knit a lot of stuff from, Ravelry download patterns, where since you're not so limited by, like, printing space, everything can be broken out in a way that's much easier to follow. And it probably doesn't help that I never printed the pattern. I don't usually print patterns. And I was mostly looking at it on my iPhone, so the text is, yay big kind of thing. Like, the wall of text is only about that big. So I didn't make things easy for myself either. I'm not saying, that it's really the pattern, just that circumstances made it not super easy to follow. So what I need to do now is, it's been blocked, and I need to sew in the sleeves, and then I need to sew in buttons, which I actually need to acquire. I don't have good buttons for this one in my button stash. And it's knit out of the Woolmiza DK in the Pesto colorway, and it used a fraction of one skein. I still have a lot left over, plenty to do the hat and probably multiple hats, which is kind of too bad since I bought 2 skeins of this color thinking I was going to knit the 18-month size for my older daughter and never got around to it. And so now I have 2 skeins, or almost 2 skeins, of the Woolmiza DK in a color that's not really my favorite, but works quite well for this particular pattern. So that's it for knitting past. Knitting present. I have one thing that I'm actively working on right now, and that is the Mini Manu. This is a Kate Davies pattern. She's famous for having knit the owl sweaters, for designing the owl sweaters. This is it. It doesn't look like much right now. The sweater has a really cute pleating detail at the top of the yoke that I will get to start in another inch or so of stockinette. And I'm using the Orkney DK, which is an Angora blend. It's nice and fuzzy and soft. Super impractical for a baby sweater. One of my local yarn stores, the one that's most local to me actually, has this sweater on display in this yarn, and it's just gorgeous. The fuzziness really adds to the look of an otherwise really simple sweater, and so I really wanted to knit it in this yarn. And it's the kind of thing that I would probably only knit for my own children, because I typically hand wash most of our hand knits anyway, unless I have a reason that one really needs to go through the washing machine. And so I can take responsibility for what happens to that sweater. But it's been a fun knit. It's gone way faster than I thought, because it's knit on 3.5 millimeter needles, not particularly large needles. And I was expecting it to take longer, but maybe it's because I'm just knitting it monogamously. That's probably it, that I'm not kind of going from project to project. When I've been knitting, which hasn't been a lot, I've been working on that. And it's a good project right now because it's mostly sections of plain stockinette, and there's a few areas that are a little bit different and you have to follow. Oh yes, but before I say anything else, the short rows. I love the short row technique that she uses. The the technique in the pattern, it calls them Sunday short rows, and I don't know if you can Google them or whatever, but it's a totally different technique, and I just love how it looks. You wrap the yarn in a different way, and I just feel like it's way subtler. I really, really like it, and so I will probably attempt that technique again in the future. That's really fun. So that's it. I'm enjoying it. I don't necessarily expect to get it done before the baby comes, and I'm knitting. It's the 12-month size, and we'll see kind of what that translates into in terms of age. I'm hoping it'll fit in the winter. That's the goal. I'm picturing it being worn with like a little beret in the same yarn. I think that would be adorable. I wanted it to be a size that she can wear when she's starting to sit up by herself and that kind of thing. No particular reason, just that's how I'm picturing the sweater being used. So that's it for knitting past. As far as knitting future, I have a queue a mile long. I would like to knit some booties and socks if I get a chance. And I'm thinking through what sock I want to knit for labor. I want to cast on a plain stockinette sock, just some 9-inch hayas that I can have on hand if I'm up to knitting during labor, especially during early labor, and to have at the hospital afterwards. Because last time there was a period where my husband had fallen asleep and my daughter was asleep. They were both exhausted, and I was still high off of all of the happy endorphin hormones and excitement and couldn't sleep. The irony, right? Like, this is probably my last chance to get a full night's sleep, and here I am, wide awake. Anyway, so thinking through that, there's a few more like sweater things that I'd like to get to eventually, and one in particular is what do they call it? It's an Isolde Teague pattern, and it's a lacy sweater. I can't remember the name of it, but she designed an adult version years ago, and she's slowly releasing child-size versions of a lot of her patterns, which is adorable. And I have this gray and yellow yarn that I'm picturing for this particular sweater that I bought at Sock Summit 2011 when I was pregnant with my first kid, and intended to use it for that child, but never got around to it. So thinking about doing that. And otherwise I'm just hoping that I can get some time to knit projects while I'm dealing with a newborn and a toddler in a few weeks. So we'll see what happens in terms of knitting time. Alright, so freshly pressed. I have a few sewing projects to show. First one, I showed one diaper. It was a newborn diaper that I made. Sorry, I'm doing the Velcro. So I ended up sewing, I think it was about 12 or so infant, newborn size diapers. And then I decided to do some medium size, because I figured we could use some extra diapers for our daughter. So these are the mediums. There's skulls. And the pattern, I switched patterns. I had started out using one that used fold over elastic for the gusset stuff. And I didn't really like working with the fold over elastic. I didn't really love how it turned out. And so this one is the turned top stitched. So that's it there. Cute little skulls. One of the reasons for knitting the cloth diapers is, to be perfectly honest, is that the fabric available are adorable. So there's like some neon skulls and some leopard print and some fake denim. So one thing about diapers, I'm just showing them. So the Babyville book comes with 4 sizes: newborn, small, medium, and large. And I sewed some mediums. I sewed some newborns to pad out our newborn stash. And I did mediums. And a lot of people will sew like a set in each size. I don't personally recommend that. I especially don't recommend doing that before you have the baby. And the reason for that is that even though they're sized, you may not need each size. So with my daughter, we had a set of like 1 size diapers, which are meant to fit like all the way through. They've got little snap things to adjust them. And we used those from when she was about 12 weeks old through to now. But in that set, we also had some mediums that were just medium-sized diapers. Now, it took her longer to fit those, but not that much longer. Like, we made them work, I think, by the time she was about 4 months. By the time she'd fully outgrown the newborn size diapers, we didn't have any more newborn ones that fit. Those ones fit fine. And they still fit now. So and she's 2.5 when we're starting to work on potty training. So making the size large maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. And the size smalls, I think she would have outgrown pretty fast. So in our particular case, making the newborns and then making a set of mediums is what I think makes the most sense. So as far as making the larger sizes of diapers, I would suggest making some, waiting to see kind of what body shape your child has, because it's not about like height, for example. Like the height of a child doesn't matter. It's about kind of the size of their legs and the size of their waist. And that changes quite a bit when they're really small, but it stops changing as dramatically, right? My daughter doesn't grow out these days as much as she grows up. And the up doesn't really make a difference in terms of the fit of the diapers at this point. They all, the medium ones that we've had for years now, they fit her the same at 2.5 as they fit her at a year, basically. So, and kids start to get leaner too. So you might find that if you sew, a set of like 24 or something large diapers, that you might not end up using them. Same goes, like maybe you'll have a child that has wider legs or a wider tummy. Maybe the medium sizes won't make sense. Maybe you want to skip right to making the larges. And if you use the Velcro, I'm personally a fan of Velcro for diapers because you can get a really exact sizing. Then you can adjust them down and out and stuff. So that is what I would recommend for anyone that is interested in sewing diapers for babies. But they're super fun and they're quick. And someone I know, she does the Welford Pearls blog. She posted about her diaper sewing experience quite a while ago. And one thing that she noted that I think is really good to remember is this is not the time for perfectionism. Remember what they're for. So, this isn't the time to be super concerned about, exact stitching and, perfect seams and that kind of thing. Like, as long as they work, that's all you really need. So, next thing, it's a little sleep sack. With some piping. It's not my best sewing job ever. So I saw a sleep sack made out of quilting fabric with piping along the sides at a sewing and knitting shop called Episode15. No. Maybe. Yeah. It was Episode15 in Montreal. And it never occurred to me to get the pattern. At the time, it seemed like it was way beyond me. So I tried to add piping to a pattern I already had. And it just I didn't do a great job of it. But, again, it's a sleep sack for a baby. She's not going to care. And it'll work just fine. It'll do the job. And it's the sleep sack pattern from Favorite Things. So it's easy enough. The fabric is a mermaid fabric from Birch called Storybook 2. And I sewed a dress for my daughter out of it quite some time ago, and had some leftovers. So I'm hoping to sew another couple of sleep sacks if I get a chance. And in those, I think I'll probably just skip the piping this time around. That also came out quite thick, and I think I might try and find a thinner lining fabric. It's lined with fleece right now, and it's quite thick, and it might end up being a little bit too warm. We'll see. So I think I'll look at finding a thinner fabric to line it with. But it's cute. It was easy to follow. It didn't take very long. It was an afternoon of sewing kind of thing. So depending on how much time I end up having, I may have time to crank out a couple more. And next thing, finished. This is the quilt. Sway's up. There we go. It's huge. It is easily big enough to go on a twin bed. And it's really big enough to be used on like a full size bed for a child. It's probably a little on the short side. I wouldn't put it on like an adult's bed, but for a child, it is huge, way bigger than I expected it to be. But that's okay, because it means it can be used quite a bit longer than if I made more of a baby size quilt. I'm excited about that. And I'm so happy that it's done and that it turned out more or less okay. I mean, there's tons of mistakes in it. There's tons and tons of mistakes in it. But it was a really good learning experience, and I think my quilting and piecing, etc. skills improved a great deal. And some of the mistakes are probably just a lesson in slowing down at the end of a big project, like not getting so caught up in, oh my god, I'm almost done, that you're making stupid mistakes. But the fabric is by Alexander Henry. It's the Once Upon a Time. And that is the fabric that we designed the room around. So we have a crib skirt with that fabric and curtains. And we use Mod Podge to put on the letters on the wall. I'm going to try and get some pictures of everything in the next few days. And I'll put them up on the blog. Next thing. So sewing on the machine, have this little dress. This is also from the Once Upon a Time fabric in the blue. It's a McCall's pattern. I don't love the pattern, but it was easy. I made this in a couple of hours yesterday. It's mostly finished. I just need to sew on the snaps. And then I need to do a little bit of slip stitching of the bodice lining. So just used a little bit of fabric that I had left over from the quilt. But this is going to be her going home dress. So let's see if I can make this work here. It's kind of picture it kind of like that. This is sort of a last minute decision that I wanted to try and sew something to put her in when we came home from the hospital, and glad it worked out. Oh, and I used the embroidery stitches on my machine for the first time. It's just a little oval thing. I don't have a lot of embroidery stitches on my machine because that's not a huge priority for me. I've owned the machine for a year and I've only used them the one time, so that says something. But they're cute. I think it'll be fun. It is designed to have a bow around it, but I think that's kind of overkill. So this will be just fine. I'm happy with it. What else? Spinning. Yes. I have been spinning. I'm spinning a couple things. So the yarn for the Procreum was spun out of Into the World, Queen of France, Biffle, which I picked up at Rhinebeck shortly after I found out I was pregnant again. And I've been spinning it on the Moosey that I picked up at Rhinebeck. I bought the fiber primarily so that I could christen the new Moosey spindle. And it was plied, the stuff that has been knit into a sweater was plied on my Ghost Moosey spindle that I acquired recently. So this is just another ball of singles. And I've got this much left to spin. It's another couple of ounces. So the sweater only took about 2 ounces of... The sweater took about 2 ounces. Sorry, there's a little blip in my computer there. The sweater took about 2 ounces of fiber. So now I'm just spinning the rest of it. And if I get a chance, I will knit some booties or a hat or something out of that. But mostly I'm just spinning it right now to finish up the fiber. I would ordinarily spin all of the fiber at once, but because I was on a non-negotiable deadline for getting that sweater done, once I had enough fiber, spun and plied, I started knitting. So, just finishing that up. I've also returned to spinning some of my Hello Yarn Mochi, or Mochi, however you pronounce it. So, I started working on this sweater quantity during Tour de Fleece last year, and I got, I think I spent 12 ounces of it before, like, my shoulder started acting up and I couldn't spin for very long periods of time. And my original goal was to spin the whole sweater quantity. I didn't even come close. And it's been kind of mostly resting on the wheel ever since. And the spinning bug caught me recently, so I sat down and I spun another 4 ounces. So I've got 16 ounces out of 32 of the singles spun. I have 4 more bags left, so yeah, another 16 ounces to go. I'm going to try and work on that through the Tour de Fleece, but I'm also going to have a newborn, so I'm not setting any goals for Tour de Fleece. The goal is just kind of to try and spin if I can and when I can and see what happens. But it's going well. It's lovely to spin. It's the superwash biffle. It's so lovely and soft and nice, and I'm looking forward to seeing kind of what happens with it in terms of the yarn. It was a club colorway from sometime last year, but just haven't been able to devote the kind of attention to the wheel spinning in particular, because it's harder to kind of like sit down at the wheel. I can pick up the spindle, here and there and just go, and spinning's honestly been neglected because I didn't have any spinning, any projects that I specifically wanted to spin and make for the baby. The sweater thing just kind of came up at the last minute. Whereas I've had this big list of sewing projects in particular that I wanted to get done, and some knitting projects. And I keep adding sewing projects right now. So the spinning's gotten pretty neglected, and the knitting even has gotten neglected as well. So the last thing that I have been crafting, here, I'll take this out actually, is the Once Upon a Time sampler from the Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery. So this is a block of the month style of pattern. You can see that I am behind. I am almost finished with April. Oop, over here. I am hoping in the next few days to get caught up, because I would like to be caught up before the baby gets here. Because who knows when how far behind I'm going to get once I have a newborn and a toddler. But it's really fun. It's the kind of thing that I don't know, I don't know if I'm ever going to get super into cross stitching. It's not a big, this is definitely more of a product thing for me, I guess. It's something that the theme with the fairy tale really goes with the fairy tale theme that we're doing in the room. And so I got really excited about that. And I like that I don't need to stress about getting it done, because I can't get it done before the end of December anyway. And I'm looking forward to putting this up on their wall or on their door or some such thing. But I'm enjoying it though, and it's nice to have. One thing I'm finding actually is having a large variety of projects helps keep me from developing various muscle aches and pains and things because I'm changing up what I'm doing all the time. So if I sat and cross-stitched for, hours at a time, I would probably start to feel it in like my wrists and hands and shoulders. Same goes like if I was knitting. Sewing, I start to feel it in like my hips and legs. And spinning the same thing. But since I'm going from craft to craft all the time, I don't get anything done, but I don't start to hurt. So there's that. Anyway, I think that's everything. So I hope everything is going well with everyone else and that the weather is treating you well. It's finally sunny here and I can dry my knitting outside. This is huge because knitting often, it takes forever to dry stuff here sometimes, especially if you have to dry it indoors. And I've been washing all of our pendants from our last baby and doing all this stuff. So it's nice to have the sun shining in, and I think I'm going to go sit outside and work on some crafting for a little bit. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon, and happy knitting.